Welcome back to the show. My next guest is a musician, a composer, a theater artist, wears many hats, and is part of a really, really unique experience. And here to tell us more about that, I'm joined by Angela Schleihauf, who is that composer, co-creator of Skin Songs. Welcome. Great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Angela, let's talk a little bit about your background. First of all, as a musician, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I grew up in the classical music tradition, very literally. My mom was a piano teacher. And through that, I eventually discovered my own love for composing and creating music. So after I finished my master's in oboe performance, I moved over into more composition and collaborative projects, including a GCTC internship where I learned about sound design for theater. So that's how I sort of started to bridge over. But I've also done a number of different types of projects in folk music and other varieties. So I just love exploring different styles.
For myself, and I'm sure for some of our viewers, just wrapping your head around composing music. For me, I love music, but that skill set is like way beyond me. What is that process like, especially when it comes to, like classical music?
Sure. Well, I tend not to compose too much in the classical tradition. I've done some that were like light classical, maybe. For me, it's really based on my experience as a performer, so I tend to play the parts through, whether it's on keyboard or oboe or however, and then I record them and layer them, and often for sound design for theater, I can use that as the finished product, but if I'm working with other musicians, then I need to figure out the notation and that right. Next step. But for me, I guess I think about it as a language, mostly. It's something I grew up with, so I just kind of imagine sound and then find my way to get there.
As I mentioned off the top, you're the co-creator of Skin Songs.
Yes.
Tell me the inspiration behind this and how this idea came about.
Absolutely. So I was invited onto the project by Eleanor Crowder and Lola Ryan, who were both involved from the very beginning. They're two of the other artists on the show.
Okay.
And the idea was to reflect on our own experiences as women. And these two artists had been building their own writings for many years about their different reflections. And while I didn't contribute any of my own writings to this project, as a woman I have my own experiences, and what has been really interesting to me about this project is that even though I am a woman going through life in this body, I learned a lot through reading and hearing the sounds of the poetry of these two artists. And it's just fascinating how there's so many points where we have parallels and connections, then there's also parts that are completely unique from person to person. And so I think for me as the creator on the sound side, that's been really what's special and unique about this show.
Yeah, and part of it is creating this soundscape, and you mentioned some components there. Poetry is part of this, but one thing that stood out to me was part of the soundscape is through text and music. Tell me about that combination.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a bit of our transformation because of the pandemic. That's sort of where the inspiration came for this adaptation. So in the context of the pandemic, we had initially thought of it as a theater show indoors, but with all the restrictions, we're figuring out how we could move it into a more open space. And so in bringing it outside, we didn't want to lose that sense of intimacy that we would otherwise get in a theater. And with how personal the stories were, we wanted to really maintain that. So we decided instead of the actors speaking everything would be recorded. And then we also added in two additional artists, Jackie Dutoit and Jessica Ruano. And I interviewed them in the recording studio and then took their stories and interspersed them with Lola and Eleanor's to create even a larger picture.
So is it all recorded then?
So yeah, it's all recorded, and then underneath that, the whole 55 minutes has a sound score, a continuous sound score. So it's a very interesting contrast between a private experience of hearing things through your headphones as you go through this experience with us.
That is cool.
While being in this very public setting and having these spontaneous interactions of what's going on around us, and I guess rooting all those stories in the broader context of life.
Right.
Yeah.
We were just showing some photos, but wanted to give context to one of them, and that is called the tech case.
Sure.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, sure. So the tech case, as part of this experience, everyone comes to it with their own their own personal devices and headset so that they're able to connect into the Zoom event, which is the way that I transmit the sound score to everyone into their headphones. And with the tech case, we will be going through the park, following the dancers and the performance through this very beautiful setting. And I will be pulling the tech case behind me because that supplies the sound and the Wi-Fi. So
so that's why the little wagon that we saw was there. So you're literally walking around with a little red wagon.
Exactly, and red is the color of our show, so this shade of red will be the one to look for.
Tell me about the logistics of coordinating, because you've got to create a Wi-Fi hub in a public space. How does that work exactly?
Yeah, well, studying classical music and oboe really wasn't the natural step to this. So it's been a really interesting experimental process, and learning along the way of like, what do you do when this is what you'd like to have happen in a park. So through some research, I discovered that there are these Wi-Fi hubs that are often used for camping, and so for those who don't have data, they can join into the Wi-Fi hub and still experience the program with us. That's what that's about.
That is amazing.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm just thinking, it just sounds risky to me. I mean, do you feel like stressed out about what if the hub goes down or something?
We've got two of them, We've got some backups.
You got some backup. You mentioned this was in a public space. This is happening at Strathcona Park, right?
Yes, it is happening at Strathcona Park, and we've been working there over the last few years, testing this out, figuring it out, and we're really excited to see the public there. You can find us by the red color if you're not sure where to go when you get there. But all of the information is also posted online about the show on Eventbrite too.
And when is the run of the show? Sorry.
The show will be June 1st to the 11th, so it starts next Thursday, and it runs Thursday to Sunday each of those weeks, 6 p.m. every night.
Excellent.
And Tactics, our production company, has been
we've had
putting that
Tactics
together.
On. What a great organization, and this is so unique. I cannot wait. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you joining us, Angela. We'll be right back after this.